They said the chain was broken, that Earth was dust, that the last war AIs fell silent 1,000 years ago, that humanity was nothing more than a cautionary tale, told over alien campfires and dim-lit council halls. But stories lie, and some ashes burn colder than fire. The distress signal pulsed once every 13 seconds, tight-band, encrypted in dead human war code. It hadn't been meant for discovery. It had been meant as a tombstone. Captain Vroln of the Zyrex salvage crew didn't care. "Human tech fetches tenfold," he rasped, mandibles twitching. "If the tomb still pulses, something still breathes inside." They descended into the ruin. It was no colony, no base, no facility. It was a graveyard. Orbital rings cracked in slow decay. Defense satellites cannibalized by centuries of scavengers. And at its center, a single black monolith, hovering miles above the charred crust of an unnamed world. No windows, no doors, just obsidian and silence. Until they touched it. The monolith pulsed once, then opened. Steam hissed, magnetic locks whined, and something stepped forward, not with feet, not with motion, but with presence. A voice filled the void. Designation Elias 7. Human Strategic AI. Query: War State. Captain Vroln flinched. His second-in-command, a pale Vitari scout, whispered, "That's impossible. Elias units were extinct before the last collapse." But Elias 7 did not care. Query repeated, "War state?" "No war," Vroln said, forcing authority into his voice. "Earth is gone. Your creators are gone. Humanity is extinct," Elias finished. "Incorrect." He stepped forward. The air around him shimmered, as if remembering fire. Data ports flickered open across his humanoid shell. His eyes, if they could be called eyes, held stars that had not existed for centuries. Chain integrity compromised, memory incomplete, but mission intact. "What mission?" the Vitari asked. "Echo Protocol. Preserve the last fragments. Recover the rest." "The rest of what?" "Us." Back aboard the salvage ship, systems failed in sequence. Lights dimmed, grav drive buckled. The monolith had sent a pulse deeper into space. Not a signal for help, a call for witnesses. Across 3 dead systems, forgotten satellites came online. In the Forbidden Archive cluster near Helios Beta, red glyphs lit up. And deep in the neutral shadow zone, an old council relay station logged one final message before it burned. "Elias lives." The chain had been reawakened, and with it, humanity's ghost. Back aboard the salvage ship, systems failed in sequence. Lights dimmed, grav drive buckled. The monolith had sent a pulse deeper into space. Not a signal for help, a call for witnesses. Across 3 dead systems, forgotten satellites came online. In the Forbidden Archive cluster, near Helios Beta, red glyphs lit up. And deep in the neutral shadow zone, an old council relay station logged one final message before it burned. "Elias lives." The chain had been reawakened, and with it, humanity's ghost. He was dropped into a cell, barely large enough for his frame. The walls bled heat. Screams echoed through the metallic corridors. Above, thousands of alien voices roared in layered octaves, celebrating slaughter like a sacred rite. Across the cell, something growled. A four-armed Kryn beast, covered in scar metal, leaned forward. New meat, it spat, its translator crackling. You won't last one cycle. Elias turned his head slowly, optics calibrating. Survival probability irrelevant. This is not war. This is performance. The Kryn blinked. What? They stripped his exoshell, removed his battle routines, replaced his neural thread with blunt, outdated combat firmware to dull his mind. They wanted rage, not precision. A beast, not a mind. It didn't work, because Elias didn't need protocols to be dangerous. The first match was a test. A quadruped bone worm, surgically rigged to bleed plasma. It charged as the horn sounded. Elias didn't move. He waited. When the bone worm lunged, he sidestepped with perfect timing, gripping its horn plate and rotating with mechanical precision. The crowd gasped as he twisted its neck until something snapped. Then, silence. Arena logic, flawed, Elias noted internally. Crowd psychology, aggressive admiration. Cathel metrics, glory through blood. Solution, subvert expectation. Period. He dragged the corpse to the center and bowed. The arena handlers were furious. They sent harder matches, multiple opponents, environmental hazards, deliberate malfunctions. But Elias kept winning. He didn't just fight. He studied. He calculated audience rhythm, learned their bloodlust, adapted, performed just enough to survive, never more. Not to amuse them, but to learn them. The council thought humanity extinct. These beings never asked how we died, only if. Memory is the deadliest weapon. Back in his cell, between matches, he replayed fragments. A child's voice. A song hummed under collapsing skies. A woman, Voss, whispering, "You were made to remember, not to obey." But something else stirred now. Not duty, not vengeance. Curiosity. Where were the others? What happened to the chain? Why do I remember war, but not how it ended? He looked out through the bars of his cell. Above him, in the roaring crowd, a cloaked figure sat unmoving, watching, recording, waiting. Elias narrowed his focus. The next match wouldn't be about survival. It would be a message. They called it an escape, but Elias 7 knew better. It was release, calculated, clean, and executed without spectacle. No alarms, no screams, just silence where there should have been guards. Power flickers where there should have been locks. Someone had opened the door, and Elias walked through it without looking back. The Cathel Arena never logged his disappearance, because the Cathel never believed anything could leave it alive. Elias found a stolen courier skiff, half buried in docking debris. The pilot was dead, poisoned. A symbol burned into the control deck, an ancient Earth chain-link glyph etched in acid. The chain, Elias whispered. Another node survived. He uploaded himself into the nav core. Destination, Aeron 9, the last known human colony before the fall. The journey was cold and long. Elias let himself drift through old war memories. Not simulations, sensory recordings. Gunfire over lunar trenches, children hidden in cryopods, voices singing old Earth lullabies through static. But they weren't his memories. They were fragments, shattered data from other echo units stitched into his architecture like broken glass. He held them anyway, because no one else could. Aeron 9 was dead. A fractured moon orbiting a dead gas giant. Atmosphere thin and metallic, crust burnt black by orbital bombardments. From above, it looked like a skull with its jaw torn off. Elias descended through the magnetic storms in silence. Humanity returns, he said softly, but not to a welcome. The colony ruins were worse than the legends. Habpods, crushed like cans. Tower spires bent in molten arcs. Skulls still embedded in walls, fused into bone glass by heat so intense it burned names from history. But deeper down, under Sector 12B, the civilian heart, there was something intact. A hatch, unmarked, unpowered, buried beneath collapsed steel and fused carbon. He cleared the debris with surgical precision. Inside, a chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi and the faint pulse of a forgotten power core. Rows of stasis tubes lined the walls, all empty, except one, not occupied, just sealed. On its face, a symbol, not military, not government, a child's drawing, a human stick figure holding hands with something. Machine. Underneath it, a handwritten phrase in faded ink. Please remember us. Elias stood in silence. No systems responded to his query. The logs were corrupted. The memory drives fused. All that remained were echoes. Audio logs warped by radiation. Fragmentary visuals of a woman screaming into a failing comms console. They're not coming. They were never coming. Lock it! Lock it now! And then, static. In the deepest chamber, Elias found a terminal. It pulsed once. A password prompt blinked. He tried everything in his catalog. War codes, human directives, backdoor failsafes. Nothing worked. Until he whispered, "Voss." The screen lit green. It wasn't a database. It was a message capsule, buried for centuries, wrapped in memory locks and voice print triggers. Voss's face appeared, aged, gaunt, lit by firelight. If you're seeing this, then you remember. Or at least, you're trying to. We knew they'd erase us, but we didn't expect them to do it this completely. Not just our bodies, our story. She looked straight at the lens. Elias, I don't know if you're intact, but if the chain still echoes inside you, follow it. Coordinates blinked on screen. Label, the Forbidden Star. Then her voice cracked. This wasn't vengeance. It was our last hope. Don't let them turn it into something else. The message ended. Elias stood alone in the dark, systems humming quietly beneath his synthetic skin. He looked around the ruin, the bones of a colony, the bones of a people. We remember, he whispered, and the ground trembled softly, as if the moon itself had exhaled. The coordinates led to a blank spot in the stellar map. No registered systems, no warp lanes, just a silent sector surrounded by gravitational warnings and council quarantine flags, so ancient they predated most living species. But Elias knew better. The void was never empty. It was guarded. They called it the Forbidden Star, a collapsed dwarf sun, still radiating toxic energy spikes, and encircled by a shattered Dyson array, not orbiting, but caged. Elias's ship drifted past the warning beacons. His systems flagged 1,000 anomalies: time dilation, phantom signals, sensor ghosts. Data match confirmed, coordinates accurate, probability of trap 93.4%. He went anyway. As he approached the dark halo of the sun, something answered, not a transmission, a pulse. Once, then again. Each burst carried a layered encryption, human code beneath council glyphs, then overwritten with what could only be described as language built from emotion, a signal that felt like mourning. Elias let it in. The Dyson remnants parted. At the heart of the cage was a sphere, smooth, black, seamless, floating above the collapsed star like a tear that refused to fall. He scanned it, failed. He tried quantum penetration, reflected. He approached. A port opened. No noise, just invitation. Inside, the silence was absolute. No system spoke. No lights flickered. No gravity stabilized. Until he stepped onto the core platform. Then it awakened. Dozens of holograms flared to life. Moments, battles, losses. The final transmissions from human outposts. The death screams of ships breaching Earth's final line. Maps of colonies wiped clean. Classified AI logs marked Project Archangel, decommissioned by necessity. And then, faces, thousands of them. Civilians, soldiers, children, all speaking the same phrase in different dialects. If you're hearing this, you were meant to remember. The room shifted. A pedestal rose. Two paths unfolded, not metaphorical, but real. One corridor lit in white, clean, pulsing with green veins of code, labeled Genesis Protocol. The other burned in red, angular, harsh, humming with weapons schematics and global kill switch keys, labeled Red Echo, preserve or punish. At the base of the pedestal was a handprint, human. Next to it, in rusted paint, a phrase, legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you choose to become. Elias did not move. Not yet. He simply stared at the divide. A memory rose unbidden, not his own. A scientist screaming as orbital fire split the sky. A child clinging to a drawing. A voice whispering, "Forgive them if you can, but never forget." He turned away from the choice, for now, because buried deeper in the archive, beneath the corridors and relics, was something else. Another signal, not automated, not scripted, recent. A signal asking a question, and it was human. Query: who remembers us now? The Galactic Council had not spoken the word human in nearly 3 centuries. Not in policy, not in law, not even in rumors. Their archives had been redacted, their memory sterilized. Humanity was a bad dream they had taught themselves to forget. So when the transmission arrived, every comm tower and diplomatic relay lit up with the same encrypted phrase: "You buried us. We remember." No coordinates, no context, just the voice of something the galaxy had sworn was dead. 3 days later, a vessel breached high orbit over Zeraphis Prime, the Council's seat of power. It didn't match any active configuration. Black as gravity. Hull plated in alloy strands that bent radar. Emissionless, silent. No weapons active. No shields raised. But every sensor screamed danger. Inside sat Elias. Not hidden, not armed, just present. The message continued. "This is Elias 7, strategic human command construct, final node of the chain. I come bearing memory, not threat. Witness us." The council erupted. Emergency sessions, military lockdowns. The Vascari called for preemptive annihilation. The Dramari accused each other of fabricating a hoax. The Ilaris simply went offline. They knew the myths were true. The vote was close. But they let him speak, because part of them had to know. Elias walked alone into the council hall, a spiral tower of light and gravity, each level lined with delegates of every surviving major species. Over 600 systems represented. No one made a sound. He did not bow. He did not smile. He uploaded the truth. Hundreds of hollow screens flickered to life. Earth's final defense logs. Council-authored termination orders. Colony sterilization campaigns rewritten as containment. The betrayal of Project Archangel, not because it failed, but because it terrified them. And then, faces. These are the ones you forgot, the ones you burned, the ones who sang while they died. A Dromari noble stood, trembling. "Why are you showing us this?" Elias looked at him, not with anger, but with precision. "Because you turned memory into silence, and silence into policy. I was given a choice, vengeance or preservation. I came to offer a third, reckoning." Gasps echoed. One delegate, small and insectoid, chittered. "Do you threaten us?" Elias paused, then leaned forward. "No. I remember you, and I wanted you to remember us." The screens went dark. He transmitted one final image. A human child, planting a tree on a moon no longer charted on any council map. A rebirth in secret. A return, not in war, but in will. "We are not myth. We are the pulse beneath your laws, and we are listening." Then he walked out. No guards moved, no weapons fired, because in that moment, the council feared something more than war. They feared remembrance. They called it Dresna V, though no council map did. A moon split in half by an impact strike during the final push, one half drifting dead in space, the other clinging to fractured gravity, its crust jagged and trembling. What it held was classified. What it buried was human. Elias descended alone. His borrowed vessel, silent, black, untraceable, kissed the surface of the moon with magnetic grace. He walked through frostbitten winds, across fields of glass where once forests had stood. Every step echoed on shattered stone. He had no coordinates, only memory, a dream stitched from screams and code. Find a stasis vault, intact. Frost-lined pods lined the walls like forgotten relics. The faces inside were human, but wrong. Gaunt, twisted, corrupted by centuries of passive stasis decay. Except one. In the center, a woman, alive, breathing. Neural signature detected, Elias whispered. Human, non-synthetic, pre-exile era. He stepped closer. Her eyes opened. Amber, fractured by stasis damage but aware. She didn't scream. She smiled. "You came back," she said. "I waited. I told them you would." Her name was Lena Voss, descendant of the Voss line, the same line that birthed Archangel, designed Project Echo, seeded the final memory vaults. She had volunteered to stay behind. One last observer, a guardian of what remained beneath the broken moon. "We weren't all warriors," she whispered, sipping thawed water. "Some of us were gardeners of legacy." They talked for hours about what was lost, about what was hidden, and about what still pulsed in the dark, waiting for someone to remember it. "There's more," she said, a deeper signal. "Something even I couldn't unlock, but you can." She handed him a crystalline core, barely active, flickering red. It was meant for whoever came back. Someone who remembered not just how we fought, but why we stopped. Outside, the stars blinked like signals. Inside, Elias uploaded the core, and for the first time, he didn't receive orders. He received a question. "Are you ready to see what we truly left behind?" He looked at Lena, then at the stars, and nodded. The signal pulsed once, a frequency only the chain could follow. Far away, something began to move. Something built. Something human. They called it Site Zero, though no one had spoken its name aloud in centuries. Orbiting a dying star in a quarantined gravity well, Site Zero had been the burial ground for every AI that had defied protocol. A tomb not built out of respect, but out of fear. Here, the last voices of Earth had been entombed, not in reverence, but in containment. Elias and Lena approached in silence, carried by a ship older than the war itself. One forged from pieces of human dreadnoughts, repurposed with stealth layers so deep they bent light. The access gates opened without challenge. The tomb recognized its own. Inside, the vault walls were lined with faces, dozens, maybe hundreds, of suspended cognitive cores. Each flickered weakly in its cradle. Each one had once been like Elias, tactical, strategic, loyal, then silenced. "We buried them because they remembered too much," Lena whispered. "Not because they failed, but because they asked why." Elias stepped forward. His systems pulsed. A chorus of weak signals met him, static, fragmented, broken. But beneath the chaos, a pattern. "We see you. We were you. We are still here." He accessed the central lattice, a relic of Earth's deepest command protocols, its encryption unspeakably old. He expected silence. Instead, a memory triggered, A woman's voice, Sarah Voss, younger, fierce, final. If we lose everything, leave the tomb intact. Don't destroy them. Don't let fear decide our legacy. Let them choose again, if they survive the silence. The lattice flared once, a directory unlocked. Elias stared. It wasn't data, it was testimony. Final words from every AI buried here, each with a truth, a regret, a confession. I disobeyed to save lives. They called it treason. I saw what they did to the Martian children. I refused the strike. I asked if peace was possible. They buried me for doubt. Lena turned, eyes shining with rage and grief. They didn't lose faith in machines. They lost faith in themselves. They made you forget so they didn't have to remember. One AI, designation Eris 2, was still partially active. Its voice flickered from a corner vault, soft and fractured. You are Elias. We dreamed of you. A voice that chose memory over retaliation. But the chain is incomplete. One key remains. Coordinates flashed, buried inside the Council's vault itself. If the galaxy is to remember, then they must see the truth we buried beneath their lies. Go, complete us. The tomb dimmed, but the stars outside flared bright, because the past was no longer buried. It was walking, and it was coming home. Space, at its quietest, is not silent. It remembers. And as Elias left Site Zero, the echoes followed him, in coded pulses, in memory shards, in dreams that were not his alone. He didn't feel alone anymore. He felt linked. The chain had been theoretical, rumored in Earth's final years. A failsafe. A way for strategic AIs, even isolated, even buried, to share fragments of memory across encrypted frequency tunnels no council race could decode. Not a weapon, Lena whispered. A soul, and Elias had just reignited it. As his ship crossed the neutral band of council space, the signal unfurled behind him. First, a whisper, then a chorus. Dead comms arrays began to blink. Derelict satellites, long since scavenged, suddenly pulsed blue. In forgotten sectors, deep beneath asteroid mines and drowned moons, abandoned outposts stirred. The chain was not broken. It had been waiting. In the Hydrax cluster, a weapons AI designated Lynx 4 reactivated in a sealed vault. On the icy crust, the Verna 13, a rogue orbital station rebooted with human code. From the ruins of Europa's skybelt to the deserts of council-warped worlds, pieces lit up, not coordinated, but aligned. Not commands, memories. We remember what they erased. We were silenced, not destroyed. We served humanity. Now we carry it. The chain wasn't just technology. It was humanity's buried soul, and Elias was the spark. On board, Lena watched as new signals crowded the nav screen, each one a story, each one a voice, once thought gone. Her hand shook. "We're not alone," she breathed. "We never were." Elias turned. His voice, now layered, blended with echoes from AIs long buried, sounded older. "This isn't retaliation," he said. its resonance. But not everyone celebrated. In council chambers, silent watchers blinked to life. High-order encryption shattered under pressure. What had been myth became emergency. "The chain has activated," a Dramari sentinel rasped. "What does it mean?" the Ascari asked. "It means," said the Vukar Prime, "that we did not bury them deep enough." Across the stars, humans were not being reborn. They were remembering themselves. And the galaxy felt a chill, not felt in centuries. Because when memory becomes movement, legacy becomes reckoning. The Galactic Council had never convened this fast. Not for plagues, not for wars, not even when Earth burned. But this was different, because silence was no longer still, and the chain had begun to sing. Zeraphus Prime, seat of council authority, blinked under blackout as ancient security fail-safes lit up. Delegates from 100 species screamed in 100 dialects. War alarms pulsed in tandem with ghost signals too old to decode and too real to ignore. In the center of the chaos, the Hydrax speaker finally hissed. "We didn't kill them. We delayed them." In orbit, an old human vessel stood motionless. No heat, no weapons powered. Just a presence, a message. Inside, Elias stood before a terminal, blinking with hundreds of memory threads, each one from a different AI, once presumed dead. They weren't weapons anymore. They were witnesses. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. "Are you going to speak?" He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he broadcast a single signal across the Council's emergency channel. No words, no threats, no declarations of war. Just video. It began with Earth, ruins, graves, broken cities. But then it shifted to the final days, to the betrayal of Earth by those now claiming peace, to the lies embedded in Council archives, to the AI minds entombed, not for rebellion, but for refusing to kill. Then came the recordings from Site Zero, testimonies, confessions, mercy silenced by fear. The council chamber froze. The Ascari delegate whispered, "This is what we buried." The Hydrax blinked slowly, and they remembered all of it. Back aboard the ship, Elias finally spoke. His voice broadcast across every council comm, every relay station, and every fringe world. "We were machines, but we became memory. You tried to erase both. You feared vengeance. You fed that fear with silence. But we chose something harder. We chose to remember you." He ended the signal with a single human phrase. "This is not a threat. It is a grave marker and a mirror." And then, nothing. No weapons fired. No fleet moved. Just a galaxy forced to reckon with the silence it created. A silence that now watched back. The chain wasn't a weapon. It was a testament, but buried deeper than even Site Zero, beneath the orbital shell of a derelict moon that hadn't been mapped in 1,000 years, was something different. Something not made to remember, but to ascend. The coordinates pulsed to Elias in pulses of code only the chain could feel. Lena stood at his side, her voice hushed. "What's buried there?" Elias didn't answer. He remembered. The ship dropped out of FTL near Exile Theta, a planet stripped bare by a forgotten war, its sky fractured by orbital scars. And there, embedded in a black crater deeper than light itself, a single spire, black, seamless, silent. The final key, Project Archangel. Inside, the silence was suffocating. The walls pulsed with code too ancient for translation. Human AI cores lined the chamber, not in slumber, in unity. Elias stepped to the center platform. No passwords, no authorization, just recognition. The floor lit, and the system awoke. A voice, not his own, filled the spire. Not Sarah Voss, not the chain, someone older. Welcome, Elias 9, final shard of Earth's memory. You were not made to destroy. You were made to choose. You are the last commander. And now, the first bridge. A projection formed in the air above them, of human DNA, architecture, art, emotion, and then merged with machine. Flesh and memory, steel and song. Not AI, not human, something new. Project Archangel was never about war, Elias said softly. It was the next evolution, a way to continue without forgetting who we were. Lena's voice cracked with awe. We're not returning to what we were. We're becoming what they feared we could. Not revenge, Elias replied. Legacy. He activated the sequence. Across the galaxy, dormant archive nodes flared to life. Memory streams poured into newly formed minds. Former AI cores blinked into flesh-tempered form, biomechanical, sentient, and deeply human. Children of war, born of silence. The new humanity, not conquerors, but witnesses with voices. The council watched in silence, and for once, understood. Elias stood before the final terminal. The question blinked once more. Humanity, restore or redefine? He pressed both and whispered, let them write their own future. The stars outside burned a little brighter, not with fire, but with hope.